One of the common questions and topics among beginner exercisers as well as experienced exercise advocates is cardio and the best type of cardio for both fat loss, energy, endurance, and more. So I want to talk today a little about the difference between our preconceived idea of long duration, low intensity, fat burning cardio versus high intensity interval training. Over the past couple of decades, we've been taught by researchers and the media that in order to burn the highest amount of fat, we need to do long duration, low intensity cardio, which is usually walking at a moderate pace on a treadmill for 45 minutes to an hour, or the same type of energy level on a bike or an elliptical machine, depending on what's available. But all of it is meant to only work your heart, but so much. And the idea behind that is that there's a specific zone, a heart rate zone that you work that burns a higher level of fat to the amount of calories that are expended. But as the years have gone by, research has proven that yes, you are burning a higher level of fat compared to calories expended, but that doesn't mean that you're burning the highest amount of fat possible. A higher intensity cardio, which takes your heart rate up into the next level, actually burns more fat, total fat, in a given amount of time, but it also burns a higher amount of calories. So there's a lot of debate out there as to what is most effective. But with both of those types, the idea is that you're burning the fat during your exercise. So in that 45 minutes or an hour that you're on the machine is when the fat burning is taking process. And it's effective, but only to so much, and it depends on what you're eating, what your energy expenditure has been for the remainder of the day and prior to the exercise. So there's a lot of discrepancies and variation from person to person in that principle. And to briefly explain that a little bit more, when you do that long duration, low intensity, or even longer duration, moderate to high intensity exercise, the idea behind it is that you burn up the glycogen in your body, the glucose in your body, all that sugar store, and then once you've expended that, you have to pull into your fat stores to continue to provide energy. And so that's where, depending on what you've eaten prior to and for the last couple of days, will depend on how much sugar you have stored in your body. So it may or may not be effective for you. But one of the things that has recently been a big trend, and what I consider to be one of the most effective ways to perform cardio, is interval training, and more particularly high intensity interval training, or HIIT. And the idea behind this is that we're placing a higher demand on our body, we're pushing it to the extreme, giving the absolute of our muscle capacity, our energy capacity, and then the fat burning doesn't only happen during the exercise, but then it continues to happen during the recovery phase, because you put a higher amount of strain on those muscles and on your heart that it has to utilize energy to recover and recuperate from that strain. So let me explain some examples of interval training and HIIT training so that you understand how you can perform these. Interval training is exactly what it says. It's intervals. So a basic interval would be maybe 2 minutes of moderate intensity, and then followed by a minute of a high intensity, and then maybe 30 seconds of recovery in a low intensity, and then you would repeat that. And so let's say you're on the treadmill or walking outside, either one, and you want to walk at a pace on a scale of 1 to 10. Your effort, 1 being the easiest it could possibly be, you feel like you've just woken up and crawled out of bed, 10 being so hard you feel like you might keel over. You want to be working at about a 6, 5, 6, maybe as much as a 7, but not any higher than that. So that would be moderate intensity. You feel like, yeah, I could keep going at this pace for a little while, and so you do that for a couple minutes. And then you do a minute of very high intensity, almost feeling like you're sprinting. You're walking as fast as you can without going into a jog. And so your heart rate is starting to pick up, and you feel more like an 8 or a 9 on that energy scale. And then after you're done with that, you drop it all the way down to like a 3 or a 4. And so it's pretty easy. You're taking a light stroll. You could go about that for hours. It feels a little bit hard because you're still recovering from that sprint phase, that high intensity phase, but it's a much easier, slower walk. So that's a basic interval training. High intensity interval training is the same basic principle, only it takes it a little bit further. Instead of working in those same ranges, what we work in is a much higher level down to a much lower level, back to back. So you may do at level 4 or 5, you might walk for 2 minutes. And then for 30 seconds to 40 seconds, you would sprint. I mean, you're at a 9 or a 10, all out, as much as you can possibly go. You're running, walking as fast as you can, whatever your preference is. I mean, you just feel like, if I have to go with this for 5 more seconds, I'm going to pass out. And the idea is that you're pushing your muscles to the extreme. And what you're doing is you're depleting the energy in your muscles through the use of your glucose, your stored sugar, as well as the creatine phosphate, which is what pushes the energy in your muscles. And I won't get into a science lesson here, but those are the components in your muscles that provide energy. So when you perform those sprints, you deplete that. You can only keep the sprint up for so long because your muscles can only, if you're really going at the highest possible rate, your muscles can only keep that up but for so long. So then you have to recover and let all of that build back up. So when you're a beginner doing HIIT training, you'll probably do 2 minutes to 30 or 40 seconds. And as you progress and you get stronger, you then start to do 30 to 40 seconds to maybe a minute to a minute and a half. And that interval gets a little bit closer in terms of the same amount of time. However, you usually do at least 1.5 to 2 times as much recovery as your high intensity or your sprint. So the reason that this is so effective, again, is because you're basically pushing your muscles to the max. You're depleting them of all of the energy that they have. And then over the next 24 to 48 hours, they have to recover. And it does take that long. It may feel like you're back to normal, but if you were to go and perform the exact same exercise the next day, you probably wouldn't have quite the capacity. You wouldn't be able to push as much as you did the day before. Well, if you did the day before correctly, if you really pushed to the all out, you wouldn't be able to do that much. So the HIIT cardio is meant to be performed every other or every third day, depending on your schedule. And it's also done at shorter time. You don't need to do this for 60 minutes. Usually 20 to 30 minutes is all that a person is really able to do effectively. And as a beginner, you may even be starting off in that 12 to 15 minute range. So if you're doing cardio and you're kind of bored with that monotonous 60 minutes of the same exact pace on the same machine, try changing it up a little bit. It's going to take a little while for your heart to adjust. You're going to put a different strain on the vascular system, and your heart rate will slowly start to catch up. So be patient. It's going to take a few weeks. And check out my website and blog. What I will do is post an example of a beginner into an intermediate HIIT training that you can follow. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to email.